to describe their relationship to the waterfront land here, where La Rochelle was built. We extend our respect and gratitude to Wabanaki peoples and their ancestors, and we recognize their rich histories and living cultures. I also want to let you know that if you are not a member of the museum, please consider joining. Benefits include free admission to the museum, advance notice of special programs, invitations to member-only events, and other benefits as well. So now to our speaker, Dr. Richard Kurin is the Distinguished Scholar and Ambassador at Large, as well as the former Undersecretary for History, Art, and Culture at the Smithsonian. In addition, he is the Interim Director of the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, which he directed for decades prior to his current position. I first met Richard when we were planning the celebration of the 150th birthday of the Smithsonian, and by the way, the Smithsonian is celebrating the 175th birthday this year. Dr. Kurin served on the U.S. National Commission for UNESCO and helped draft an international treaty now ratified by 170 nations to safeguard living cultural heritage. He has led efforts to save heritage in Nepal, Mali, Egypt, Iraq, Syria, and most recently Afghanistan, and once again Haiti. Dr. Kurin serves as the Smithsonian liaison to the U.S. President's Committee for the Arts and the Humanities and the White House Historical Association, and is a member of the U.S. Department of State Cultural Heritage Coordinating Committee. He is the author of 6 books, an anthropologist with a doctorate from the University of Chicago. He specialized in the study of South Asia, conducting years of field work in India and Pakistan. He spent over a decade on the trail of the Hope Diamond. Following Richard's talk today, he'll be signing the Hope Diamond book that he wrote on the piazza, where we will invite you to share in some refreshments. So now please silence your cell phones. Don't forget to do that. And join me in welcoming Dr. Richard Carey.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to be here on such a beautiful day with the skies getting blue. It's a little cloudy this morning. I talked to my wife, who's a school teacher, who's just starting to go back to school, a little nervous because of COVID and everything. But I said, how's the weather down there? She said, well, it's supposed to be 98, 90% humidity. I said, that ain't me today. Bar Harbor. So it's really wonderful to be here. Carol and I go back as colleagues for many decades. We work together with the National Museum of the American Indian and other projects at the Smithsonian. And I'm just glad to be here with you today. So I'm going to talk about the Hope Diamond, and Earl is giving, I'm going to do this by Earl's cell phone, so I can get the slides. And of course, I think it was evident in the article in the paper, and some of you know, there was a woman, Evelyn Walsh McLean, who owned the Hope Diamond, who came to Bar Harbor for many years, and I think, right, this is...
Yes, just this week, we were gifted reportedly one of the dresses from a volunteer here at the museum. So it needs a little bit of restoration and cleaning. Don't forget to silence your phone. But we put it up especially for our program tonight.
So I'm going to talk about something about Evelyn and the history of the Hope Diamond. I've been working at the Smithsonian for 45 years. I started with the bicentennial of the United States in 1976. A lot of younger people ask, what was 1976 in the bicentennial? I can't remember. Were you alive back during the Revolution? No, I wasn't. But so this is what the Hope Diamond looks like today in its setting, 45 and a half carats. The largest blue diamond known on the planet. This is what it came to be. Smithsonian. Here you go. It was mailed by a guy named Harry Winston. Anybody ever hear of Harry Winston?
Yeah,
Okay.
one of my favorites.
One of my favorites, right? And can you see what the postage was? Can you read that? No, $2.60. The Hope Diamond was mailed in a package for $2.66. It was brought by a guy from Harry Winston's shop on Fifth Avenue, brought to the General Post Office in New York, and put in the mail. Arrived a few days later at the Smithsonian and said, "See you later." And you can imagine the heart attack, like, what? Anyway, it got there. And it was on display. Has anybody seen the Hope Diamond at the Smithsonian? Yeah, okay. So a few million people come here to see that Hope Diamond. You see? And this is what it looked like when it came in that box in 1958. Harry Winston's wife. Harry didn't like to do stuff in public, didn't like his picture taken, but it was donated to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian was very happy to have the donation, and it came to the Natural History Museum, where it still remains today on the wall. And it came in November of 1958. It was put in this very attractive setting. This is like the first modern installation at the Smithsonian. It gives you an idea of how far museums have come. You know, I call this the ship's portal. Installation. Not very attractive there. You'd have to get up to it. But there was a lot of people, and at the Smithsonian we have hundreds and hundreds of letters that people wrote to the Smithsonian. And they wrote, why is the Smithsonian getting this whole diamond? It's cursed. And if the Smithsonian, which is the National Museum of the United States, is getting the whole diamond, then our nation will be cursed. And people actually wrote. People wrote to Eisenhower, who was president. And the White House would send over these letters to the Smithsonian. Why are you guys doing this? This was a cartoon from, it was a syndicated cartoon that went around the country at the time. You see the Capitol sinking into the background, kind of like today. And but here's Uncle Sam working, wearing a Hope Diamond and experiencing, various problems in our country. And the whole idea is, why are we doing this? It's only going to make our problems worse. Of course, the Smithsonian said, the head of the Smithsonian, Carmichael, who's the secretary of the Smithsonian, he said, we're very interested in the Hope Diamond because it's a wonderful scientific specimen. Nobody believed that. It was like cursed. This is a famous thing. So anyway, the Smithsonian put it in that setting. And then this guy, James Todd, he was a postman who delivered the Hope Diamond to the Smithsonian. He actually got out of his car at the main post office in Washington, D.C., drove a mile alone with this diamond to deliver it. Well, months following his delivery of that Hope Diamond, his wife had a heart attack. He ended up with his broken leg. His dog was killed, and his house got burned. All of a sudden, everybody in Washington says, maybe that curse is real. So all of a sudden, there was whispers about it. So one of the questions is, where does that curse come from? And how did this diamond end up in the Smithsonian? And what were the tough? Well, the curse story actually started in this hotel, Hotel Bristol. I don't know if people have stayed there in Paris. It still exists. Wonderful hotel. And it was told by this guy, Pierre Cartier. Cartier is, of course, a jeweler. And he told it to this couple, Ned and Evelyn Walsh McLean. And he came in. They had a rough night in Paris the day before. Evelyn and Ned had bought a very large diamond a year and a half before. And Cartier comes in to their hotel suite at the Hotel Bristol. And comes in, and they're a little, hungover. And Cartier comes in, and he has a blue box. And he starts telling you the story of what's in the box. He says, what's in this box is an interesting diamond. It's called the Hope Diamond. And it was first discovered in India by this guy, Tavernier, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, traveled to India in the mid-1600s, and he brought back the diamond, and it was given to Louis XVI. 16th, Marie Antoinette. Yeah. What happened to them? Right? Not so good. Then it ended up in the family of the Hopes, after its name. And Lord Hope, one of the richest families in England, went bankrupt. And then it went to the Sultan of Turkey, and he had a paramour. And of course, we know what happened in the Turkish Revolution. And so this is a cursed diamond. Well, Evelyn, who was kind of a character, to say the least, she loved the story. They thought the story was great. It really gave notoriety to this diamond. And actually, they didn't buy it then, but they did buy it later in the year. So I spent about 13 years kind of tracking down the history of this diamond and where it came from originally. And was everything that Cartier said true? Was there anything to this story? So, this is Tavernier, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, and he was a young man in Europe, and French and Belgian background, and he loved diamonds. And he believed at that time in Europe, people didn't know where diamonds came from. There was no South African diamonds, there was no Brazilian diamonds. All diamonds in history, during Roman times and medieval times, were supposedly coming from India. But nobody knew where they got it. How were diamonds gotten, as they say? And the main myth, the main story was, there was a diamond valley in India. See all these diamonds and gems. And in that valley was guarded by snakes. And so the Indians, to get diamonds, how do you get diamonds? Well, what you do is you catapult meat. You chop up an elephant, and you catapult the meat into the valley. And then what happens is the diamonds stick to the fat of the meat. And then eagles or vultures or whatever swoop in to get the meat. And what's attached to the meat? The diamonds. And that's how it's done. So that's how Europeans thought you get diamonds. That's a little harder than going down to the corner jewelry store. Okay. So Tavernier wanted to go to India to find out and get some of those diamonds and bring them back because Europeans were starting to be exposed to diamonds. So he went to this area of India called Golconda. It's in the middle of the country. It's where Hyderabad is, now in the province of Andhra Pradesh. And he drew maps. And he tried to track down where, because nobody knows where exactly the diamond mines were. It's not like you advertise them. So he actually ended up writing a book and describing how the Indians mined diamonds. And unlike South Africa with the big hole at Kimberley, in India the diamonds are called alluvial diamonds. They're just about 8 feet under the ground. They came up with volcanoes. They were then spread by rivers, and then they get deposited. And then you just have to dig not so far, you just have to dig in the right place, and you can find your diamonds. Tavernier described an operation where 65,000 people were working on those diamond pits to try to dig up literally a handful of diamonds. So tremendous, tremendous effort. And he reported that he acquired at the diamond mine of Kollur this 112-carat diamond. He drew, this was a picture drawn of that diamond. This is what we think it looked like from the simulation. 112 carats, a lot of diamond. And just roughly cut at the diamond mine. So I figured back in, what was it, in the early 90s, as I started doing this research, I figured I'd follow Tavernier's footsteps and look at his maps, look at his journals, and try to figure out where the diamond mines were. This is Golconda City. It's still in ruins. It was, pretty much abandoned in the 1700s. And it was interesting because when you follow, this is my journal, but when you follow Tavernier's, there were measures he used called cos and gos, which were Indian measures. He used sometimes the French lead, but how far is a gos? A gos is the distance that you could hear a cow bellow. Oh, okay, I get it. Not easy to follow. But anyway, I ended up following Tavernier, locating where the diamond mines were, and you get basically these pits of rocks that were discarded in the mining. I didn't find any other diamonds, although I was doing scholarly research. But what I did find were sculptures and patterns and textiles. And you start reading that. What anthropologists do is you read visual art. You start looking at it. Just like, that's what you do as curators and others. So, you get these representations of gems, and there's the snake guarding the gems, and here's the elephant whose beak goes, and here's the two-headed eagle or vultures that end up grabbing it. So you saw this kind of mythic story in India that was playing out, and probably the origin of those stories in Europe. So in India, one of the things I did as a graduate student was study Sanskrit, and the term for diamond is vajra. This is a vajra. For those interested in Tibetan Buddhism, sometimes they call it dorji. But the idea is, what does vajra mean in Sanskrit? It means frozen lightning. It's actually the word for lightning. And a diamond is frozen energy, frozen lightning. So who has the power to unleash frozen lightning? Who has the power to unleash it in the sky? Only the gods. So the vajra was often depicted made out of diamonds and other gems. Here's the two-headed eagle you see here. This is Indra, who's a god of thunder, and here's holding the vajra. So the idea is diamonds in Indian context, in Indian culture, meant frozen power that could only be released by the gods. Special thing. There was also a notion in Buddhism, there's a branch of Buddhism called Vajrayana Buddhism. Here you see that vajra, and it's an object of singularity. Very hard to cut a diamond. So it's concentrated, it's singular, it's unitary. And other ideas. Who was I looking at? Deborah. Where's Deborah Dyer? Yeah, Deborah has a bracelet with different gems on it. So in India, the most popular gem, traditional gem, is called Navaratna. These 9 gems. And they stand for the sun. There's the diamond in the east, different directions. And they're associated with different gods and different powers. And the idea is these gems are part of planets. Like lucky stars. Like birthstones that fall to the ground and then discover. And they bring you luck or protection. That's why you wear them. If you want to be protected against all the forces in the universe, you wear one of these kind of things, these Navaratnas, so you're protected from the influences of every bad planet and every bad star. Right? Just think even in our own language. What's the word for bad things happening? Disaster, bad stars. So Indians wore these things, and they wore these jewels largely for protection against evil and bad forces. And Indians associated different values with diamonds. A white diamond was associated with the high caste Brahmins. Blue, black, gray diamonds were associated with lower caste people. Annular diamonds were male, round diamonds were female, flat diamonds were neuter, they had ideas about clarity, godly associations, and defects. And indeed, our own word for carat comes from the Indian word rati, which is a measure of the diamond's size. So Indians had very advanced, they had thousands of years to think about what diamonds meant in our society and what the nature of diamonds were. This is not me at a younger age, but Europeans wanted the diamonds in India. When they started colonizing India, the Portuguese, the French, the British, the Dutch, diamonds were heretofore had been totally inaccessible or very rarely accessible. All of a sudden became accessible largely to royalty. And Europeans started wearing diamonds, and even in Indian style, the sarpanch on the forehead. So Tarine comes back to India, kind of learning some of this stuff, getting a bunch of diamonds. He writes what ends up being a best-selling book about his travels to India. And in it, he describes this blue diamond, okay, that he acquired. And just so when you see carats and designations for stuff, our notion of carat has now become standard. But in the 1600s, 1700s, there was the London carat, the Paris carat, the Venetian carat. It did not become standard. So you see kind of different measures, and we'll be aware of that. So one of the things that Tarine writes about, he writes about a story that he heard while he was traveling looking for diamonds and trading diamonds with Indian rulers and going to Indian mines. And he basically tells this story of a great idol with a temple that had 2 diamonds for eyes and a pendant around his neck, and they were huge diamonds. And this jeweler tried to steal it from the idol, stayed in, he shut it in the temple at night, stole the diamond. In the morning they opened the doors of the temple, and the guy was there. This little tale that Tavernier tells is the basis for every Sherlock Holmes, every mystery about diamonds, every story about cursed diamonds after that. This is the basis for it, the story he heard while he was traveling around India. So this is what a diamond looks like in the rough. Diamonds are not shiny and sparkly like well, I'd like to get some volunteers. If everybody could pass up their diamond rings. So you know your diamond ring sparkles and it shows off colors and things like that. Natural diamonds don't. They kind of look like this. And when Tavernier came back, diamond cutting was in its infancy. Europeans were first trying to figure out how to cut diamonds, how to show light. Now, think about it. How do you cut a diamond? Everybody knows how to cut it with other diamonds, right? Or diamond dust. What's the secret ingredient for cutting a diamond? Water. Not water, not water. Would you put water on your salad? No, but you put olive oil. So that's how Europeans figured out first to cut diamonds, using other diamonds and diamond dust, and olive oil as a lubricant, so it wouldn't overheat. So it was very primitive at the time, but the idea was that Indian cuts were very rough, and the idea was just to eliminate defects and bad influences that would relieve the diamond of its protective character. But Europeans started developing table cuts. Some of you may have old table cut diamonds, antique diamonds, or rose cut diamonds. The brilliant cut really doesn't get going until the late 1600s, even the 1700s, and that's what most of your diamond rings are. If you look at your diamonds very carefully, you would find that they're pretty exact. Usually they have 58 facets, 1/3 is above the girdle, 2/3 below, and it's all mathematical. And the whole idea was to make them sparkle and shine. So that was the thing. So what were the French into? What was Louis the 14th called? Yes, double jeopardy, 500. The Sun King. What does the Sun King do? The king shines. Anybody been to Versailles? Right? You look at all that glass around, and all the chandeliers, everything is sparkling and shining. So what the French saw, where the Indians saw to just eliminate the defects and preserve the protective power of the diamond, Europeans were, let's cut it down so it shines. Because that's what the most important thing is. So Louis the 14th, he wore the blue diamond, but he wore a blue diamond that was cut down. And it was cut down from 112 carats to 67 carats. Okay? He lost about 45 carats on the cutting room floor. But its value doubled because the French really, and Europeans, really value. We have a cast of how it was cut down, and then we have a simulation of what it looked like. And then Louis the 15th and Louis the 16th wore it as the Order of the Golden Fleece. This was one of those, like kings and queens, kings largely, they have the Order of the Garter and the Order of the Cross, various knightly orders. They didn't do a whole lot of fighting, but they gave themselves, medals for doing it. And so these were knightly orders. This was probably the most valuable piece of jewelry ever created by human beings. So just think about it. Here, this was the original drawing by the designer. This was a simulation that was done. This is 67 carat. There's hundreds of diamonds in here. Okay? And precious gems. This is about, 5.5 inches long. So just amazing. We have no evidence that Marie Antoinette actually wore this because it was put in a knightly order. She wouldn't wear it, but Louis the 16th definitely wore it. There you go. Of course, Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette faced the guillotine. The blue diamond of the crown was called the French blue, was looted. We think Danton, Robespierre, and others engineered the theft of those jewels to pay off the Duke of Brunswick, who was invading Paris, turned around, preserved the French Revolution. Napoleon wanted to get that French blue diamond back. He really did an amazing effort around Europe, invading houses, invading the house of the Duke of Brunswick, who was leading that army of Prussians and Austrians to take Paris after the Revolution. He could not find the blue diamond. It drove Napoleon crazy. He tried, he put people on trial, he did all sorts of investigations. He could not get it. So what did Napoleon do? Well, he's Napoleon. So what he created, Napoleon created, in this picture, but here's a close-up, he created, there was the Order of the Golden Fleece. Napoleon said, okay, I can't get the blue diamond, it would usually go there and that. I'm going to create the Order of 3 Golden Fleeces, because I'm Napoleon. So this was his frustration at not being able to get that blue diamond back. The next thing we know is that blue diamond emerges in 1812 in England. It's in the possession of a diamond dealer, Daniel Elias. He writes this for sale notice about the diamond, and this diamond is exactly what the Hope diamond looks like today. But this was, he thought it was 44 carats, 45 carats. So the diamond was cut down originally from 112 to 67, and then we think to disguise the diamond from Napoleon, that it ended up going through several hands, ended up in England in 1812. Remember, Napoleon's still around, and was cut down more and was the Hope diamond. Prince George, King George IV, but when he was prince, he ended up getting the Hope diamond. May have been worn it for his coronation, we think. And of course, he was fighting Napoleon, right? That was Wellington, this guy Wellington, it was his general. And we think he may have gotten that Hope, that blue diamond, as kind of revenge against Napoleon. You couldn't get this, but I have. And of course, they defeated him. Brits defeated him. George almost bankrupted England. He ran up tremendous debts. Anybody ever been to his to Brighton in England, in his estates? Really fantastic. It's like a pleasure palace he built. You know, he was an adulterer, he was a spendthrift, pretty lousy king, but and he ran through the British Treasury. When he died, the crown was in severe debt and had to sell it all. And he was friends with Thomas Hope, who was a designer, Orientalist, and others that helped him in Brighton and other projects. And his brother, Philip Hope, was a diamond collector. He had a collection of about 2,000 diamonds. And so we think Wellington, as the executor of George's estate, sold the blue diamond to Hope. Because, again, Hopes were among the richest families in England. We would not have been able to do, Jefferson would have not been able to do the Louisiana Purchase without those Hopes. They financed it. They loaned America the money for the Louisiana Purchase. This is what the Hope diamond looked like under the Hopes. It was set with a huge pearl. And, you know, in this kind of medallion type setting. And then it was shown at the Crystal Palace, the great London exhibition of 1851. Queen Victoria held the Hope diamond and the Koh-i-Noor, two great diamonds known in the world. It was at that exhibition that it finally got known, you know, here was the blue diamond, what do we call it? Well, it was loaned by Mr. Hope, it was loaned by Mr. Hope, so it was called Mr. Hope's diamond, Hope's blue diamond, the Hope diamond. That's how it got. It's very mundane. But a lot of it started to be theories after that exhibition of how the diamond came to be. And the idea was, okay, you had Tavernier's original diamond that he found in India. That was cut down to 67 carats. And then that diamond was cut down to the Hope diamond, leaving these two smaller diamonds. One was called the Brunswick diamond, one was called the Bean. And so people started coming up with theories of how this happened because, you know, this was one of the great diamonds in the world. Now, have I said anything about a curse so far? Nothing, right? So no ancient curse connected to this diamond, nothing about anything there so far, nothing about Cartier's story. So where does that story come from? Well, Queen Victoria became Empress of India after the so-called mutiny of India. their gods or goddesses upon us. That's basically the trope. And it fit with British colonialism at the time. Okay, at the same time that Collins is writing this novel, people discover this huge diamond. Kid says Eureka, finds a huge diamond in South Africa. And that begins the exploration and South African diamonds coming onto the market. Anybody know what those things are? Is this just a bad early photograph from the 1870s? These are rope lines. And to mine diamonds in South Africa, the big hole in Kimberley, what you'd have is everybody had their own 3-foot by 3-foot claim. And you'd mine diamonds, you'd put a bucket, and your buddies would hoist the bucket up on rope, dump it here, see if there were any diamonds, send the bucket down, and you do it. That is, the diamond claims were 3 feet by 3 feet. And what De Beers and others did is Cecil Rhodes and others, is they rationalized diamond mining in South Africa. And that put a lot of diamonds on the market. In fact, who was the biggest seller of diamonds in the world? Sears Roebuck. Anybody want a 1-carat diamond? 1995. You want 3 carats? I could get you for $79.95.
Oh my God.
What happened in South Africa is all of a sudden what had been the province of kings and queens and very wealthy aristocrats, all of a sudden became widely available. How do you now sell diamonds and sell them to the multitudes? You need a good marketing angle. What was the angle? Romance. Love. We did not do diamond engagement rings before the discovery of diamonds in South Africa. We think it's like an ancient tradition, right? And you can go back in history and find where people got engaged, got married, some people gave each other a ring with a precious gem in it. Very, very rare. Diamonds are marketed by Sears Roebuck in the 1880s to sell diamond engagement rings and diamond jewelry for guys to show women that they love them. Okay? Later, it's not till the 20s that you get the campaign diamonds are a girl's best friend. That comes later as a marketing campaign. But it starts off really, you got too many diamonds and you got to sell them. And you got to convince Americans it means love, romance, and commitment. Now, of course, if it means that for Sears, what does it mean for very wealthy people? Well, you get the Diamond Circle at the Metropolitan Opera. You get Americans, particularly where there's a lot of new wealth, buying very big diamonds. Honey, I love you, and here's a little small diamond for $19.95. But if I love you a lot, here's a huge diamond. And so if you want to show more extravagance, it's like conspicuous, consumption. You're just buying bigger diamonds to show you're more wealthy and powerful. So that happens. And among the most wealthiest family in England and Europe was this guy, the Hope family. They owned everything. They owned estates, artwork, immensely wealthy. And Hope actually fell in love with a woman from Pennsylvania, Moravian May Yohe, who was an actress. She stole his heart, and he ended up marrying her, and then she would, of course, get the Hope diamond. So this was one of their houses, okay, a little cottage. But the problem was that he started going bankrupt. He bet on the ponies a little too much. He was a gambler. And he squandered away what today would be billions of dollars. And she had to go back to work as an actress. And this caught a lot. Now you can only imagine the Brits were fuming over this because he had some other marriages, like the Vanderbilt marriage, the Hope marrying a real commoner from Pennsylvania, this actress, this show gal. And so this drove the Brits crazy, but she had to go back to work, and she was a duchess. So you can only imagine what this did in the British press and everything. And finally, he had to sell the diamond because he couldn't afford it anymore. He was put on an allowance. So he sold the diamond. He sold it to Franklin & Sons in New York for, there was a dispute over how much it was $140,000, $250,000, whatever. to New York, and here it is in New York, and there's the bankers' panic of 1907. I don't know how many finance people there are in the audience, but people might remember, not remember, but know about the bankers' panic. But a lot of places have business. So where does the bad stories about the Hope Diamond begin? They begin in the pages of the New York Times. Because the diamond dealer in New York goes bankrupt because it's holding the Hope Diamond and it can't liquidate it, can't sell it. And its whole company is going under. So you start getting stories in the New York Times and the Washington Post and other papers, remarkable gem of hoodoo. And that's where you start getting the story of Tavernet and Marie Antoinette and the Hope's going bankrupt and all this kind of stuff that has brought misfortune, still misfortune to people who owned it. The Cartiers ended up getting it from the Frankels. They tried to sell it a few times. It was a hard sell to make. But the Cartiers were really into Orientalism. They would hold all these costume balls. Cartier's brother-in-law was Worth gowns and stuff. I mean, you know, this was a period of the time. They were very much into Orientalism. And the Cartiers opened a shop in New York. And they're trying to figure out how we're going to market diamonds to New Yorkers and to Americans. They opened up a place in St. Louis as well. And there was a guy, Marcus, down the block on Fifth Avenue. They came up with a great marketing technique. Guys would come in, they'd be looking for a diamond ring or a ruby necklace or something, and hi, I'm going to give it to my wife. I'm going to give it to somebody I'm having an affair with, or whoever, my girlfriend. Marcus ended up coming up with all these little booklets. The legend of the diamond, the legend of the ruby. When you give it to your lover, here's a good story. You can camp it to mythology and a legend. It'll be very romantic. Well, the Cartiers picked up on that. They thought this was a pretty good technique. You know, it might work. And that's what the Cartiers did to sell it to Ellen Walsh McLean. What Cartier did, what Pierre Cartier did, is he took that story of the moonstone, the cursed diamond that had nothing to do with the blue diamond, nothing to do with the Hope diamond. He took these stories in the Times and the Post about misfortune, and he weaved together a modern folk tale. And that's what he told Ellen. And she bought it, hook, line, and sinker. She loved it. And so here you had it. You know, the McLeans get the Hope Diamond, blue stone, 112 carats, now 44 and a half, credited with bringing ill luck and misfortune to its possessors. And this became a story, and Evelyn flouted that story. Now, she did bring it to a priest to get it blessed. And she did say she had some reservations about it. And she was good friends with Mrs. Harding, then as a senator, then later as First Lady, who had misgivings about it. But Evelyn kind of liked it. It was fanciful. It was interesting. It had a story. I wanted a cursed diamond. This comes from India. And, you know, Marie Antoinette, Louis XVI, you know, the Hopes. Here I am. And she wore it very much in those Indian styles. You know, the sarpanch. Take that picture from that I showed you from the colonial Portuguese guy from the 1500s wearing it. Well, here's Evelyn wearing it very much in the same thing. So she was, again, with the Hardings, she was very well, they did a lot together. They went to seances, they did a bunch of stuff together. The McLeans had a young son, Vincent, who they treasured, named after her, I don't know why that's not showing. Somehow that's not showing, but that's Evelyn and Ned McLean with their boys, a little blacked out. And this is where they lived here, when they summered here. At the Briars, right, Deborah?
Yes.
Okay. And they would spend, sometimes they'd spend time in Newport, they spent a lot of time in Palm Beach. You know, on the great estate just outside of Washington on a board called Friendship, they had a golf course, a menagerie, a few other things. She did parties. She was really the hostess of Washington, D.C. And then in 1919, tragedy struck. Her son, Vincent, was hit by a car just outside their estate. They rushed in doctors, Johns Hopkins, from other hospitals, and Vincent This was known as the $100 million bid. And, you know, this was such a great tragedy. And so here was, you know, their beloved son struck down and killed. Well, all of a sudden, the newspapers start having a field day with this. They build on that tragedy. And the whole notion is, who will next own this 180,000 death jewel? The gem of disaster, whose malignant rays, oops, excuse me, that's some of those malignant rays. Those rays that have been those evil rays that blocked the diamond from India, from the curse, from the gods, is now coming to haunt one of the richest families in the United States. A great tragedy. And that was kind of the logic, if you will, the cultural logic of the curse. And so there was a big question with this. Well, Mrs. Hope, who had gotten divorced from Lord Hope, you know, had been a duchess, you know, went back to the stage. Yeah. And she ends up with her own rags to riches story. She does a movie, a silent movie called The Hope Diamond Mystery. And in the Hope Diamond Mystery, she has this guy whose name is Boris Karloff. Yeah, right. The evil Indian prince. You know, it's the moon story all over again. It's that section from Tavernier's journal. How this is a stolen diamond, it's going to cause you misfortune, and we're here to get it back. And so she does that, and her own life was a rags to riches story because she was once this American duchess, you know, of an English aristocrat, one of the richest people in the world, and she ended up becoming a custodian in the Seattle shipyard, literally washing clothes. Whoa, yeah. So that really popularized the purse. And around the same time, in the teens and the 20s, you had ideas that the Titanic was cursed. There's a lot of songs. Lead Belly does these songs on God's hand on the water. The idea that the sinking of the Titanic was retribution against very wealthy people right now who abused their position in society. You had the curse of Tutankhamun's curse. The idea that here the Brits going in and digging up the rulers of ancient Egypt and then dying. Whose wrath was that? I mean, we've now created like all those mummy movies, right? It's kind of the same thing. So it's retribution by the powerless against the powerful. That's kind of the trope. And you had people like John D. Rockefeller saying, God gave me my money. And there were a lot of people who said, yeah, and now somebody else's God is taking it away. So it really resonated. And when you had very wealthy people like Evelyn Washington, for example, having her Great Dane wear the whole diamond, you know, and people, some people didn't have enough to eat. It's like, what's going on? Maybe this is dessert. So you had that kind of trope playing out both in terms of class and in terms of kind of Europe and the United States vis-a-vis the rest of the world. So Maclean's are very powerful. Of course, he owned the Washington Post as well as many other things. And Evelyn, this is Jazz Age Evelyn. I'm kind of really fond of this picture, you know, wearing the Hope Diamond and looking at the Jazz Age beauty. But Evelyn faced tragedy. Not only Vincent was he tragically killed, but her daughter Evie committed suicide. So she lost his woman who lost two of her children. And people blaming it on the Hope Diamond. She did do a lot for GI. She turned her house over to the Red Cross, GIs, to a kind of infirmary, a rest home for a while. She would do all sorts of programs with GIs during the World War II era. This is actually a pawn ticket that she used when the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped. She actually hopped. She pawned the Hope Diamond to get money to give to this very shady guy to investigate the kidnapping and get the child back. So Evelyn had a, you know, kind of very positive, generous, and giving side. She used the Hope Diamond a lot for charity. She lent it to brides for something blue. She charged people 25 cents a charity drive so they could hold the Hope Diamond. And then the money would go, like she needed 25 cents, right? And the money would go to charity. So she had that very warm and giving part, but there was also this life full of many tragedies. This is the Briars. I think this was from Life magazine. Deborah Wright, Life magazine, made a feature and of dancers at the courtyard there. And of course, that, like many other properties, was affected by the 47 fire, and everyone died. That was the end of their association. Harry Winston bought Evelyn's jewelry at an estate sale. He got it for he really got it. It was a steal. And he ended up with the Hope Diamond and others of her gems. And then Harry Winston really loved America. He's really very proud of the country and his own success in America. So he was trying to get the government to do a national gem collection. And Harry felt like, you know, all these countries in Europe have kings and queens and they have a national gem collection. They have diamonds. And here we are, America, because we got rid of our king and queens. We didn't have a national gem collection. So Harry was going to start his own. So Harry Winston in the 1950s starts the Court of Jewels. And what he does is he takes all these enormous diamonds, including the Hope diamond, he brings them around the country as local models, wear them for the cause of charity. Cystic fibrosis and many others. And I met some of these women who wore those gems in the 1950s in San Antonio and many other cities. The gems actually went to Cuba and Canada as well in the 50s. And you have in some places, this was like Lynchburg, Virginia, where it came with the Court of Jewels, and they still have a like display of the time it came to Lynchburg in 1957 or whatever. This is a model wearing some of his jewels. You can see the size of these diamonds. And finally, Harry Winston decided, okay, I'm going to donate the collection, the Hope Diamond, to the Smithsonian in the hope that it generates a national gem collection. And that's exactly what it did. And it's because Harry Winston did that, and many others did that, and now we have what's arguably the world's best gem collection. When it came to the Smithsonian in 1958, that's where we started with the postman delivering it and so on. And in 1962, the Smithsonian got a request. Charles de Gaulle, remember Charles de Gaulle? Some of the older people remember. He wanted to do what Napoleon could not. Napoleon wanted to get that blue diamond. He couldn't do it. Charles de Gaulle then said, I'd love to get that blue diamond back to Paris, because it originally came from the French blue. And I'd like to reunite it with the other French jewels. So he asked a lady who lived in a house down the block from the Smithsonian, named Jackie Kennedy, could you tell the Smithsonian to loan the Hope Diamond to the Louvre? We may be curators, we may be scholars, but we ain't stupid. So curators at the time said, no way, no how. The head of the Smithsonian asked Earl Warren, the Chief Justice of the United States, do I have to listen to Jackie Kennedy? I mean, really, we have the notes of that extent. It was like creating this thing. So finally, curators thought of a pretty good idea. I think this is a great idea for making museum loans. The Smithsonian said, okay, we'll lend you the Hope Diamond, but we need a hostage. So the Smithsonian lent the Louvre the Hope Diamond, and in return, the Louvre lent the Smithsonian a lovely lady with an enigmatic smile by the name of Mona Lisa. See, that's how museums really works. And of course, the Mona Lisa came to the United States for a tour, and both went back. I got involved in 1985 when I was working for the Smithsonian, because there's that old installation, right, of the Hope Diamond. In back is Rajiv Gandhi, the head, and I was doing work for the Smithsonian. Bob Adams was secretary of the Smithsonian. And we put it on display, and I told my boss, I said, Bob, Are you crazy? We're going to put her on display in front of the Prime Minister of India. He's going to ask for it back. We're going to have that problem. What are we going to do? But he insisted we do it. We put it right, seated Nancy Reagan next to it, and I hadn't known at the time that Nancy Reagan was very superstitious. So this did not go over well. In the 90s, we were trying to raise money for that new installation because I think you will agree with me, that's a pretty hard installation. So we came up with different ideas. One was a Vincent Price-like supernatural setting. The other one was more sophisticated, but we needed to raise money for it. And we got Michelle Pfeiffer to do a campaign for us, Life magazine and other places. So Michelle Pfeiffer came to the museum in the evening, after hours. We put her in a museum case, literally, with a Hope Diamond and other gems. And she did this photo shoot for life. And then my colleague, Jeff Post, is getting to it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. We're trying to close down because we've got to open up the museum in the morning. And he's looking and says, there's some things missing here. Because some stuff fell out of the setting. We weren't accusing Michelle Pfeiffer of stealing anything, but Jeff Post had the inevitable task of saying, Ms. Pfeiffer, can you stand up for us and shake a bit and see what comes loose? And indeed, we found diamonds. This is the setting it is today in the Winston Gallery. Harry Winston did a lovely donation. And again, about 5-6 million people a year, not COVID years, but usual years, come and visit the Hope Diamond. It's very popular. A few years ago, we played around with a national contest for people to pick a new design of how the Hope Diamond could be displayed. And I think it was, Enchanting Hope or something, that was the winning entry. There's always been issues. Now remember, when we were talking about that blue diamond, 112 carats, cut down to 67, cut down to 45. What happened to the missing pieces? What are these? Do you have them in your jewelry box? Maybe no. But all sorts of people have come to us over the years to say, yeah, the Russians came to us and said, yeah, we have something at the Hermitage that's blue. There was something at the Cincinnati Museum that depicted in a painting of blue diamonds. So basically over the last decade, we've done a lot of simulations of the diamond, recreating and looking at how it could have been cut and whether any pieces could have come off. And we argue about that. I kind of think some pieces could have come off. Jeff Post, the curator of the diamond, thinks it's all dust. Who knows? Okay. We've experimented with the Hope Diamond, so when it's not on display in the museum, we take it off display, again at night, and we've subjected it to lasers and other experiments, gouging out atoms of the Hope Diamond, trying to figure out why is it so blue. And it turns out, if you have 1 million atoms, if you have one atom per million of boron, it makes it blue. If there were 2, it would be black.
Wow.
So we've experimented with a lot of blue diamonds. Here's the eeriest thing. I mean, if you really want to be freaked out. So you stand here late at night, and you bombard the Hope Diamond with ultraviolet light. And then it turns this color. It phosphorizes red. Is that the evil eye? Is that physical evidence of the curse? We're still working on that one. I did look at everybody who's ever owned or taken care of the Hope Diamond, stored the Hope Diamond, and try to get what was the age they died at? My hypothesis was if it's really cursed, people who owned and stored the Hope Diamond would die at a young age. Some of my colleagues are on the list here, people who are still alive, and they're upping the average. But basically, people who've owned and cared for the Hope Diamond don't die any earlier than people who don't. So it doesn't seem to be anything like that. So a lot of this and much more is detailed in the book. I'll be glad to sign for anybody who is interested. And that's when I install the Hope Diamond. So thank you very much.